Hey guys, welcome back to the classroom. I'm Dr. Roshan Amnarain, and it's you, me, and my trusty whiteboard here, where we talk about things of the body, mind, heart, and spirit in a relatively easy to understand format, in the hopes that we could bring empowerment to each and every one of us. Today's lecture is a follow-up from the previous lecture posted, where we talked about the shadow self. The shadow. And just a very, very, very quick recap. The shadow is basically the part of ourselves that we would rather not acknowledge. Now, I wrote down all of these words here because it's really, really, really important that we have a clear definition of what our shadow self is. It's a part of ourselves where all our negative human attributes come from. Because remember, like I said in the previous lecture, we all walk around thinking that we're relatively virtuous people. We're good, we're happy, we help each other, we try to do our best, we put good into the world, and that's perfectly fine. But at the same time, we also have to acknowledge as well that there are some very human characteristics and traits about us that is present. And the only way to be able to treat with those negative traits is to begin the process of acknowledging them first and foremost, and then eventually unpacking them. So today, we're going to talk about what I teased last lecture. We're going to talk about what's called shadow work. And again, this is work from the famed psychologist Dr. Carl Jung. He did some pretty interesting work, and again, I'm giving my spin on all of this, my interpretation, and what I pick and choose from his work that I felt was practical and applicable. So, to do shadow work, essentially, the work that's required to be able to acknowledge and unpack a lot of these not nice emotions. And actually, you know what? Let's for the sake of clarity, let's define some of these negative emotions. Anger, jealousy, fear, resentment, grief. Is there any others? Insecurity. And the list goes on. Right? So, a lot of the time, guys, these negative emotions, they're not at the forefront of our mind, right? And also, and this is more important as well, a lot of times we are okay to feel these negative emotions. So, for instance, there's something that's called righteous anger. I am angry because this person came and kicked my dog. How could they do that? Because something that was done to us and we have reasonable cause to be angry. Or for instance, we have severe grief. Why? Because grief is the emotion that we experience in response to a loss. And so we suffered a great life-changing loss. And we feel that it's appropriate to have this massive grief. But I'm here to tell you today, guys, that these negative emotions aren't inherently bad, because they are part of the human experience. But what I'm here to define and to really compare and contrast is when these negative emotions turn into toxic emotions. And what delineates this, or what defines this, is when these negative emotions begin to overpower us, when they begin to consume us. Because, for instance, a little bit of fear will be enough to make us not go into that deep, dark cave where a bear may be waiting. But a toxic amount of fear will paralyze us if we see a bear and it's charging towards us. You know, that if that makes sense? A little bit of grief, for instance, will help us to mourn the loss of a loved one. But a toxic amount of grief, for instance, will make it so that we are no use to ourselves or to others 3-4 years down the road. And so it is the amount of this negative emotion and how profoundly it affects us for the period of time. We, for instance, someone may have kicked our dog and so we resent them. But 6-7 years down the road, and we still resenting them, it's not going to serve us well. And these things sink into our shadow self. So, shadow work is what will help us to unpack and to acknowledge a lot of these negative emotions. So, in order to do shadow work, you must first lay the groundwork for it. So, two things has to be present. Two qualities need to be present before we even begin the shadow work. And those two qualities are, one, we must be willing to change. If there is no desire to change, then no change will be had. Plain and simple. And so, shadow work is not something that can be forced onto an individual. An individual must realize, something, these negative qualities of mine are not serving me well. They are destroying my personal relationships. They are destroying my professional relationships. They are limiting me from my potential in life. And I would want to make a change. So that desire to make a change has to be first and foremost. Nothing can't happen here unless this is fulfilled. And the other criteria that has to happen for us to be able to do shadow work is, and I'm going to use a dramatic word here, but there's a reason why, we have to be brutally honest with ourselves. And the reason being is because if we're not honest with ourselves, then the whole exercise fails. Because let's say, for instance, we are resentful of someone, but it's okay, it's not that bad, I'm not really that resentful. Then a lot of stones go unturned, and we only just scratch the surface. So the ability to be honest with ourselves is critical to the success of shadow work. And I use the word brutally just to emphasize how honest we have to be. Not in a self-deprecating way, or not to make something a mountain of a molehill, for instance. But we have to be really, really honest and sincere with ourselves. We have to be willing to see ourselves in an objective way for who we truly are. And again, guys, I'll pose this question to you all. How many of us are willing to do so? So, I would encourage each and every one of you all to think about these two criteria and figure out where you all are in terms of these two. And if you're not there, that's okay. And I'll use this phrase over and over again. Welcome to being human. Welcome to being human. And as a result, if you're not there yet, then work on it. Every day, think about the things that you don't like about yourself and build that desire to change. And if, for instance, you're having difficulty in being honest with yourself, that's okay. Right? Work on it. Work on being honest with yourself. Work on seeing yourself for who you are. Seek out the advice and the opinions of people that know you and care about you. People that care about you enough to be honest with you. And that way, it might help you to find that perspective. So, once these two criteria are fulfilled, then the work begins. And I promise you, it is not complex. It is extremely, extremely simple, but it is very, very, very difficult to do. For instance, anyone can pick up a bat and hit a cricket ball, or anyone can swing a foot and hit a football. But to be able to master it, to be able to face an in-swinger, or to be able to take a free kick, takes countless hours of work, persistence, dedication, and a desire to be better. So for me at least, my form of shadow work is extremely simple. And all begins with a question. And the question is, this is the question. I am because. And that right there is the basis of shadow work. I am angry because. I am jealous because. I am grieving because. And I leave here open-ended in order for my mind to be able to fill in the blanks. What I do is I write this down, and then I write down my answer. The answer does not have to be this long, drawn-out dissertation. It doesn't have to be paragraphs upon paragraphs. The answer could literally be one word. I am fearful because I'm afraid of dying, for instance. And that right there, the only thing that I ask of you is that you don't reflect on your question too much. Let the first thing that comes to your mind go onto the page, right? And in this exercise, you might be surprised to find the profound things that come up. I am jealous because my sibling is being treated better than I am. Whatever, whatever is applicable to you. After this, what I want you to do is whatever is written here, I would love for you to reflect. Reflect on it. Whether the reflection involves just reading it over and over again, whether the reflection is going outside with a cup of tea and just thinking about that new insight that you have, whether it is you take a pen to paper and you journal exactly what it is that you feel about it. And in this reflection, coupled with brutal honesty, when I say brutal honesty, with honesty, the work now starts to unfold. The shadow self suddenly gets lit up. The shadow self comes into light, essentially. And my advice, be kind to yourself and understand that we are all human. And hear me when I say, welcome to the human experience. We have to be willing to acknowledge that we are not perfect. And for me, the human experience is about the constant work to be better. We are here to be our brother's keeper. And how can we be our brother's keeper if we ourselves aren't up to mark? And so to fulfill that obligation to others, it requires that we do some work on ourselves. And this doesn't have to happen in one night. We don't have to write it, we don't even have to reflect on it the same night. For instance, one day of work could literally just be filling out the sentence here, and that's it. And suddenly something that was in the shadow comes to light, and at that point we can just leave it for a day or two, let our subconscious chew on it a little bit, and then perhaps put pen to paper or reflect on what was said. Yeah, boy, my sibling really got treated better than me, but the way I was treated made me stronger, and so maybe it worked out well in that way. Because I didn't get so and so, I was able to find the strength to do so and so, and you know what? Because I was able to do this, because of the way I was treated, I'm grateful for it. And in that moment, we find forgiveness, we find gratitude for what happened to us, because we realize the positives from it. And in that moment, a small percentage of this negative emotion evaporates. That is the point of shadow work. And as a result of that, we are a few percentage points less angry or jealous or fearful, and that now reflects in our entire daily life. I promise you, people will say, hey boy, I find you looking a little bit chipper, you're feeling a little light today, you're smiling a bit more. That's how it's going to be practically. We won't be as triggered as we normally were. That hot temper that was boiling over, that jealousy that was there, that small internal resentment that was eating away at us, will all start to disappear through this work. And again, like with all the methods that I give during these talks, it requires time, persistence, and perseverance. Think about the guy who could kick a football versus someone who could take a free kick and score a goal. It takes time, effort, and persistence. Every week, you just fill the sentence out once. You take an emotion, whatever you feel like, put it here, and then just write. Once a week, twice a week, however you want to do it. This will be a practice that you carry forward for the rest of your days. Why? Because life happens every day. And as a result of life happening, we accrue these negative emotions. And ultimately, my goal for myself and my goal for each and every one of you all is to be able to get to a place where we are centered and we are not controlled by these negative, toxic emotions. And as a result of that, it is very easy to forgive. It is very easy to be grateful for how we are treated. And that way, we move through life relatively unencumbered. And that here is the point of shadow work. I try to make it as simple as, I try to sort of boil down and crystallize exactly what I think shadow work is and what it means to me, and provide a structure that we could use on a daily basis or a weekly basis that can help us to unpack some of these things. So if there's any questions or concerns, please leave a comment, like and subscribe, and I'll catch you guys on the next classroom.